What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some important earnings that just came out for NIO and Target and the overall market. What's going on with the big headlines that just came out, and some big news about Tesla as we ended up seeing a fire very close to one of their gigafactories. So I'm going to break down all this news, talk about what the charts are suggesting what you should be watching for today as we have big data coming out. But before I break down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner. Take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. The offer ends very, very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, looking at SPY, this thing came down pretty hard exactly as predicted. It ended up hitting 510 exactly as we predicted as well. And we got a little pullback that is continuing to perpetuate throughout the markets, right? Tesla's down pretty big as well, down another 3% in the pre-market as we got more bad news. NIO is down with its earnings, and if you look at this, the market's red all over the place. Even the QQQ is currently at 441, exactly as we were predicting, some more downside. I also said Nvda could push more. Nvidia's up in the pre-market as expected. Microsoft is down as expected. Everything's aligned with my expectations, and we're seeing this little pullback. I also told you all that Coinbase could push more. That's green right now, so everything so far is exactly as we predicted from yesterday. But the question is, what's going to happen from this point on? I want to remind everyone that today is Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. At 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI report coming out. Okay, this is going to be important for understanding the gauge of our economy. And then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes after the market opens, we have the ISM data coming out. This is very important. The new orders is going to give us a good understanding of how the economy is looking in the future alongside ISM services prices. This is very important data, and this data is going to help us see how things are looking and what on earth businesses are expecting moving forward. Then after all this data comes out, we have Barr giving a speech at noon and then 3:30 p.m. from the Fed. Okay, I want to warn you guys about this. This is going to cause some high volatility at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll see if the market continues to bounce when this comes out or if the market continues to fall. But watch for high volatility at that time. When it comes to earnings, this morning we just got NIO and Target. And after the market closes, we have Ross, ChargePoint, and CrowdStrike. Now for NIO, unfortunately, their guidance was not the strongest, but they did end up beating on EPS and revenue. So right here, you guys can see they ended up doing relatively well. Their loss, at least relative to what we saw before, was not as bad. But another thing that's worth noting is that their revenue, that was also not bad. I forgot to mention that was pretty good overall. You can see that they reported about 17 billion in yuan, which is about 2.41 billion USD, which is above expectations. They also beat on EPS. Their deliveries were 50,000, but unfortunately, this is where I do see a little issue. The forward outlook, the company guided for about 31,000 to 33,000 units for the first quarter, and that's considering the fact that they had a very, very weak February. And that's because of big drops in sales in China. And because their sales are not as great looking, and because there weren't as many talks about, big improvements in that sense, I mean, the company's share price didn't really get as much of a soar. It didn't really pump as much as it could have. So it is what it is, guys. This tends to happen sometimes. For Target shares popped as they boost their profits, but sales forecast was not as strong. But despite that, it's still holding up nicely. So what's interesting about Target is the fact that you can see with their earnings right here, they beat on EPS and revenue. They barely beat on revenue. They didn't have the strongest of sales many people are looking for, but overall, I would say that with good earnings and net income still rising 58%, that was enough to really save it. Their overall, forecast wasn't as strong, but with good net income, good earnings, and things like that, that managed to offset everything. Target is still up despite all those other factors. Now, a couple of news affecting the markets real quick. The market is kind of coming down just a bit as we predicted. So far, it's happening. Target ended up reporting, as I just said, did relatively well. Spirit Airlines and JetBlue are ending their agreement to merge, citing regulatory hurdles. That is very, very important news for them. For Ford, U.S. sales leaped 10.5% last month compared with February 2023. and its EVs and hybrid models are actually spiking a bit, especially thanks to the price cuts and the big discounts that they announced. That's good news for Ford. But I also want to note that Bitcoin is also getting closer to all-time highs. It's currently at about 69,000, which is great news for the cryptocurrency enthusiasts out there. We're also seeing other cryptocurrencies like Dogecoin surging. That's great, and this is all approaching the month of April as we're going to see some new news coming out. For now, and then when it comes to Tesla, there's something that just happened. The Tesla Berlin Gigafactory has halted production after suspected arson attack at a nearby substation. So this is very important. There was an evacuation, and with this happening, it just caused Tesla to drop even more. So for SPY, what's going on is we look bearish right now. It does look like it's going to test 510, and we'll have to see if we end up breaking below this or not. We are looking kind of weak right now, but we could make a little rebound first before we continue to sink. But whether or not we end up ultimately continuing to sink all the way down to 508 or 507 is going to depend on this data coming out. So watch for that very carefully. Also watch resistance at 512 and 512.5. Now, it is possible that we get a little pop again when we open. We pump it back up just a little bit, and then we continue to sink lower. But in order for us to really sink to much lower levels, like 508 or so, we have to see what the reaction is after this data comes out. So I think it's going to pop a little bit and then continue back down here to 510. And then we'll see if we lose 510. If we do end up losing it, a bigger drop is going to be coming. We could actually fill this imbalance at 509, and we'll eventually reach 508.5 and lower levels way down here. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. I do believe there's a very good chance we could kind of like pump and then drop as time goes on, but just be very, very careful, especially considering the fact that all this data is coming out. So watch your levels and know the SPY is looking kind of bearish. It may pop first and then continue lower later, but in order for us to continue to break to the lower levels, we have to see how we react to all this data. So watch for that very carefully. All right. And then on Tesla, we're looking pretty weak right now as Tesla's continuing to sell off. Tesla's selling off pretty aggressively. We're barely holding very close to about 182. That is actually a key support right here. So we're at support on Tesla. If we lose 182, we have 180, 178, and 175 as supports. But we also have 184 as resistance, followed by 186 around there. Then there's 188, not to mention 190. So we are looking kind of bearish on Tesla. We had more bad news involving the Gigafactory Berlin, and still very, very weak. It's still been selling off quite a bit. Look for a little pop and we open and may try to grab liquidity again, but then it could continue lower. And I do believe there's a risk of us losing 182 and eventually coming closer to 180 and lower levels like this. So just be very careful. Like I said, it looks very weak. It tried to rebound a little bit and failed again. So it might continue to sink, guys. So please be very, very careful with Tesla. A lot of bad news is coming out. There are a lot of sellers out there and it still looks relatively weak in my opinion. For the triple Q, right? Looking at the QQQ, I just want to mention that. Wait, hold on. Give me 1 second, guys. I have to actually open up from here because that's actually a different QQQ that pulled up. Looking at the QQQ, I just want to mention that this is also looking kind of weak. And this is exactly as we predicted. I said yesterday that the QQQ might see some downside. If you look at it, it did end up coming down to 440. Now, we're at 440. The question is, and this is the previous breakout area, previous resistance becoming support. We're going to be watching for a little rebound, a retest of like 442 or so. And then we may continue to sink all the way down to 438 if we lose 440. But if we hold it, we could consolidate a little bit. So it depends on if we lose 440 because this data is coming out, of course. I want to be open-minded just to be safe. But look for a little pump and drop and see how well we hold 440. And if the data causes us to lose 440, a bigger drop is coming. If we hold it, we could consolidate in this range for an extended period of time. So be careful, guys. QQQ is starting to downtrend a little bit. Look for a little pop and see if we continue lower later on. Be a little bit careful and we'll see what the data causes. It may pop and then drop, and we'll see if we lose 440 depending on the data. So be very, very careful. For Nvda has been pushing back up, but we want to be a little bit careful because when you look at this trend on Nvda, we have we have this high right here. We came down a little bit. We could be establishing a lower high here. This could be a sign that Nvidia is starting to downtrend just a little bit, at least just slightly. So this could be a sign of weakness on the chart, a big change in direction, right? So watch and see, does Nvidia end up getting this rejection? Watch resistance around 862, 868, then this high up here. If we end up breaking down, make sure you watch 850. If we lose that, a bigger drop is going to be coming into these lower levels over here. So I'll be watching to see how Nvidia ends up performing, and I'll be watching to see what the reaction is. But I just want to warn you all to be very, very careful, at least with the chart for the time being. I think that Nvidia may kind of pop a little bit, and if we break this high, we could attempt to push a little higher. But still, I want to warn you to be careful and see if we're forming a top, because we are starting to reject. If we end up losing 850, there could be a big drop coming all the way back down to the 842 area. And if we break above the high around 865, we could be pushing for 875 again, and potentially even 880 plus. Overall, we have this high here and we have a lower high being established. So there's a risk of it coming down lower. Just be careful if we do get this rejection or not. It may pop a little bit more, but then it may start to turn later on. And then this data could end up affecting it as well, causing an even bigger sell-off as time progresses. So with that being said, guys, we'll see what happens with Nvidia. For Apple stock, Apple, in my opinion, is continuing to sink. So just be careful. I thought that this thing could try to like rebound and try to base here, but it's continuing to look very weak, which is dragging the market down even lower. So Apple is still very, very oversold, and we've actually lost 172.5. So right now, it's trying to hold 170. That's a historical level. Uh, there's 171, sorry, and then there's 170 below that. And then if we lose this, our next target is going to be all the way down to 168. So be very careful on Apple. Apple's looking very weak right now. We have to try to get back above 172.5. Otherwise, we're going to continue to sink to 170. And there's a risk of 170 coming, which could drag the market down even lower. All right. So with that being said, guys, thank you all so much for listening. I want to let you guys know that the market looks very weak so far. SPY and these other tickers could sink lower. SPY is still holding 510 though, so just let's wait and see if we end up losing it. But we'll see what the data causes. The market may pop a little bit, then come back down, and then we'll see what the data causes. Does the data cause us to continue to lose support? Because if it does, be prepared for more downside, or do we bounce off this data unexpectedly? We'll wait and see. Unfortunately, I'm not really a fortune teller. I don't know what the data is going to look like, so I have to wait and see. As a trader, I find that to be best. We do look bearish on the charts, but we'll see what the reaction is moving forward. All right. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you guys very soon on the next one in just an hour or so. And we'll see what happens to the markets. Have a great day, guys, and peace out.